Music appreciation 101.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Music 101 podcast. I am here with very special guest, Danny Wolf. Welcome to the pod.
Hello there, Scoob. Thanks for having me.
We're going to talk about all sorts of stuff, but definitely the perspective of being a drummer, being a musician, multiple projects, doing mashups, remixes, all sorts of fun internet stuff, and just kind of what it's like to be like a musician in 2022. So, welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Would you like to just kind of start, maybe talk about some of the projects that you've been in, throw out some of your IG handles or whatever you'd like to kind of like just give the picture so that people know what makes Danny tick a little bit?
Yeah, all right. So I guess first and foremost, I'm a drummer. I'm also a producer, recording engineer. I've been getting into editing videos.
Cool.
And I have my own band called Wolf and Love, which is me and my partner, Denny Love. And also I tour as a drummer in a bunch of different projects like Great Good Fine Okay. I've toured with Rhye, Gavin Turek, John Kay. So just to name a few.
Awesome. And you're based in LA, right?
And I'm based in LA. Yeah, Glendale right now.
Glendale, nice.
Yes.
Cool. So, with all of that multi-level experience, let's hone in on kind of like the first stuff. Did you start as a drummer? Was that how you kind of like entered into music?
So I always wanted to be a drummer, and since like elementary school, and unfortunately everybody else wanted to be a drummer too. So when I tried out in school, I guess it was 5th grade. That's probably when you start?
Yeah, it sounds about right.
And yeah, so I didn't get the audition, so they put me on clarinet. Clarinet. And I did clarinet for a year and didn't like it. So then I switched to saxophone.
Cool.
And I ended up playing saxophone throughout all of high school, alto sax. And
awesome.
Always wanted to play drums and like kept on trying to, bother my band teacher, just let me play just a little bit. And so finally they let me play in the marching band.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
what instrument were you playing? Snare or?
I did the quints.
Quints, nice.
Drums. Yeah, the 5 toms basically.
Yeah.
And so that was my first time in just like playing in a music situation, in like a school situation.
Okay.
And then I got into the jazz bands. So I kept on practicing, and I was like, I can do it. I can really do it. And so finally they let me play in the jazz band, and I fell in love with jazz. And from there, I just kept practicing, and then went to music school at the University of Miami and continued my studies drumming there. So
love it.
Yeah, so that's how I started, I guess.
Do you think that by starting on an instrument like alto sax, it's like a solo heavy instrument, improvisation heavy instrument, do you think that like changed the way you listen to music as a drummer?
I think so, yeah, because I had that foundation in playing notes, instead of just rhythms. So I was, even from the beginning, I was listening to music, I think, a little bit differently than other drummers who were mostly focused on rhythms,
Yeah, totally. And I totally get that. I'm always fascinated by the different paths and the like musician that it turns you into.
Yeah. And I feel like drumming can be such a melodic instrument. It's got from, your kick drum is like the low frequencies, you can think of it, and then it's got also all the way up to the highest frequencies. So that kind of helped as a mixing engineer too, because just thinking about all the different frequencies.
Yes.
Just a drum set, like
yes.
Because like other instruments, I feel like it's more focused.
Oh yeah, big time. Like guitars, I can make a guitar that's that big.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but the drum set is typically in a mix. It takes up the whole frequency range. So,
Great point.
Yeah.
Really great point. And I also think that, yeah, a lot of people don't see the connection between rhythm and pitch in the way that, everything is emitting frequencies. So everything is actually pitched. It's just whether or not you perceive it as being pitched.
Totally. And so I actually studied. Do you know Ari Honig? He's a jazz drummer, and he was like my favorite drummer. I guess when I got out of college.
Okay.
And I ended up taking a lesson with him, and he kind of got, I don't know, famous for being able to play melodies.
That's yes. I was like, there's a light bulb in there. Okay, yeah, I remember. Yeah, he's that guy. Totally.
Yeah, and just so I took I think I only took one lesson with him, but it was really interesting to see how he thought about drums so melodically. And unlike anybody else, he was able to play really complex, like jazz bebop heads.
Right.
It was really incredible. So he was a big inspiration for me.
That's a really great point. I also I'm super obsessed as a mixing engineer too with like the harmonic series, about like how like there's no just one note unless it's like a perfect sine wave synthesizer, but like everything has got all of these other notes, and you just get to decide what you're highlighting and what you're minimizing. Yes. With EQ, saturation, all that good stuff, even compression. I find it so interesting. Like toms are like the purest notes on the drum kit, but like even like a crash cymbal has got a fundamental frequency.
Cymbals are typically very complex. Where, yeah, you're right. So toms, it has a specific pitch usually.
Yeah.
When you're hitting a tom, it's like there's like one note that's very pure.
Yeah.
There's overtones too, but it's, yeah, as you said, it's probably the most pure of all the drums.
Right. It makes sense, and it makes sense why, like, if you were a drummer that's like looking to play melodies, like straight up melodies, then you could like really put the toms to work.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember he was talking that even the pitches when he plays these melodies, the pitches aren't even as important as the melodies. So he was playing songs.
Okay.
For example, like he played, I can't even think of just like a song, or just like Mary Had a Little Lamb.
Sure.
He's like, the pitches are not as important as the rhythm, I guess that's not the best example.
No.
I guess it could work, just like based on the different toms and.
Totally. But I get what you're saying too, of like there's a certain arc and shape of a melody that's even more important than the notes themselves.
Yes, exactly. That was his point. And you could tell what the song was just by the rhythm and the approximate pitch of the toms. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I feel like sometimes people feel very like rigid about pitch because like piano, like we grow up with a piano, it's like the most rigid possible thing, but even pianos, they go out of tune. Yeah. But you can still get like, even I played a terrible side of the road in a back alley by a beach town piano. You could still make out melodies. It was completely out of tune, but it was like, there's an arc, there's a warbliness, there's a vibe.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So in terms of going from like studying in music school and then going to apply it and going out on the road and doing like session work and recording and all that kind of stuff, what was the biggest thing that you kind of took away from school, like in terms of mentality or in terms of like growth mindset, so that you could like go out on the world and keep learning?
Yeah, I think it was a lot of learning was from just my peers.
Cool.
And just, they were so inspiring to me. People like Luke Melman, who you did an interview with, like, just like being able to work with them and make music together. And just taking that and putting it into different situations. And it's interesting, like at school, you don't really realize what it's like to be a professional musician in the real world. It's like, because you have to take all the skills you learned, and it's like, okay, now this is a job. Now I need to start making money. And these days, it really helps to just broaden your horizons, and a lot of times you can't just be a drummer, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you have to also be a mixing engineer or a producer, and a lot of the times it's the guys that can, or ladies that can do, you know, a whole bunch of different things are the ones that are successful. So yeah, I feel like it's just being able to open your mind and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, do as many different things as you can.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And I agree where that diversity of skill, and then it also makes you better at your own instrument too. Like we were just talking with frequencies, you know, you think different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luke was saying something very similar about synthesizers, and like as a keyboardist, he was saying that, you know, he learned more about playing keyboards becoming a mixing engineer, because then he was thinking more in terms of frequency pockets,
Yeah.
you know, rather than just like what cool clusters or what cool notes can I use. It's like, no, I need some space right around 250 hertz. It's like, oh, this,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I see mixing as it's almost like a puzzle,
Yeah.
especially if you're just being the mixing engineer on a project and you're
Yes.
given a bunch of puzzle pieces basically. So it's, you have the drums, you have the bass, you guitars or synths, and then vocal, and you just have to find where each of those instruments fit in the frequency range.
Yes. Exactly. And where they reinforce and subtract from each other,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. Yeah.
Like
Two instruments can be in the same frequency, but you know, maybe you can pan them to the sides,
cool.
like guitar and piano. Maybe the guitar will be on one side or piano will be on the other.
Good point. Exactly. Create that separation by using your two ears
Yeah.
when they are stepping on each other or when they're occupying the same space.
Yeah.
I'm curious with like your flow for mixing. Do you like to mix like with a lot of things solo? Do you like to mix with a lot of things on at the same time, some sort of combination? Like what's your flow? Like how do you, when you just get that fresh session where it's all of these tracks, it's your first time hearing it, how do you jump in?
Yeah. So when I'm mixing, first, usually I always ask for a reference mix. So
Cool.
I listen to what the artist wants the song to sound like.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's kind of like my my framework that I'm
Cool.
working off of.
Yeah.
And I always put that in the session. I put it at the bottom, and then I'm able to solo between that and then the mix that I have going. I usually work with like I'll put some stuff on the stereo mix.
Yeah.
You know, just like some mastering plugins just to boost it up, and so I know what it's basically what it's going to sound like at the end.
Cool. So just for those that don't know what that is, so that's basically the thing that everything goes into.
Right.
It's that master, that stereo mix that you're throwing some limiting, some stuff to increase the volume. And do you do anything else like saturation or anything, or is it mostly focused on volume?
Usually I'll have at least one saturation
Yeah.
plugin. I'll have a compressor,
Cool.
like Shadow Hills.
Yeah. Totally.
And then Isotope ozone I'll usually have at the ends. That's usually my last plugin.
Cool. Yeah.
Or a multi-band compressor.
Okay.
Yeah, the DMG Limitless.
Okay. Yeah.
Go-to one these days.
Nice.
But yeah, when I'm mixing, I usually, if there's a drum set in it, that's what I start with. I really want the drums to, I want to get the drum sounds first.
Yes.
That's kind of when I'm producing, it's different. I usually don't start with drums actually. But I'm thinking rhythmically. But when I'm mixing, it's typically I'll start with the drum set.
Love it. I mean, drum set informs so much about genre.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And just like getting the track to really hit, and then everything else can kind of fit in place.
Cool.
To get the drums sitting right.
Yeah. So you're getting those transients. You're getting that thing that's going to drive it all, and then everybody can lay in with it.
Exactly.
One of the things that I've been doing more recently is just like mixing super quiet to hear the conversation between the snare drum and the vocal. Like I've been thinking a lot about how, you know, most popular music is fundamentally the conversation between the vocal or whatever's acting like a vocal. and the drum kit. Everybody else is dancing along, but that's the conversation.
Yeah, making sure the level between because the vocals, I feel like,
Hmm.
yeah, that when you listen to it at a low volume, you want to be able to hear the vocals, and if they're cutting through, then you'll be able to hear it at a low volume.
Cool. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a really good point. I want to talk about your project, and it feels like kind of disco revival, which I am 100% here for. I actually think that's kind of like what the world needs right now, is a little bit of like dance party. Like I want to hear like some like 16-minute versions of your songs, so like I just want to talk about that, like that kind of genre, your project, kind of what inspires you there, and like maybe some artists that you like kind of look up to and emulate, or have drawn inspiration from.
Yeah,
Wolf and
well,
Love.
so that's the project that I have with Denny,
Yeah.
and um, he is very influenced by artists like Whitney Houston
Love it.
and Prince,
Yeah.
and the band name actually was inspired by Hall and Oates.
Oh, cool. Nice. Yeah.
So we're
Right
just
on.
like, all right, let's just take our two last names and put them
Oh,
together.
and you have cool last names.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we both are really into dance music,
Mhm.
and so that's like a big inspiration. We're trying
Yeah.
to, when we play live, it's a lot of energy, and we want
Mhm.
people to dance.
Mhm.
That's
Totally. I completely feel that.
Yeah.
Completely feel that. What do you think about like as a drummer, like drawing from dance music from across the ages? Like how do you approach that? Like do you like listen to Daft Punk and the way they program drums, and then you're like, "Oh, I could like do that, but like add a little bit of, like Hall and Oates or
Yeah, so as far as drums with this music is, it started, a lot of the first songs that we wrote
Mhm.
were very sample based,
Cool.
and like I would use Splice a lot,
Mhm.
and the Oliver Pack. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Oliver Pack.
Awesome, and just
Yeah.
drum sounds are amazing.
Mhm.
So I was taking a lot of samples and building the drums off of that,
Mhm.
and uh these songs started as remixes.
Cool.
So I got really into, when I first got into production, I was
Mhm.
doing a bunch of remix contests.
Yeah.
So I would go onto sites like Skio Music is one of them, Metapop,
Cool.
Indaba Music, and just like some of the times I would just get the stems and
Mhm.
just try and build tracks around that.
Cool.
Yeah. And so when we were first starting the bands,
Mhm.
I was like, Denny, I have like a bunch of these tracks. They're remixes, but like
Mhm.
I'm gonna take the vocals out and then
Mhm.
see what you can do over it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think it was a lot to do with, I was just getting into production, and I was kind of nervous about
Uh-huh.
starting a song from scratch. Like I
Mhm.
just had never really done it before. So drawing inspiration from like the top lines of other songs to
Mhm.
get my tracks to a certain place.
I love that. That's a fun backdoor way to like start something from scratch without starting something from scratch.
Yeah.
That's good.
I was always, I think, just like nervous about starting from nothing,
Oh, yeah. Well, you're not alone. You're not alone. I hear so many people. The two hardest things to do is start and finish.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think our whole first EP was songs that started as remixes.
Cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
But yeah, you were asking about the drums.
Yeah. No worries.
I think eventually I started being like, well, I should start using my drum set more because I'm a
I
drummer.
can do this. Yeah.
But I should start recording my own drums.
Mhm.
And so I I would usually start with a sample
Okay.
drums. Like I would come up with a beat, and then I'd try and double it with drums and
Cool.
combine the two.
Cool.
Whether it was hi-hats
Mm-hmm.
to like give it more of an acoustic feel,
Mm-hmm.
or just like doubling with the snare drum,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Do you approach drums differently from the computer when you're programming the drums versus from the kit?
Yeah, very much. So like when I'm working on a computer,
Yeah.
A lot of people that program drums, they'll use like a pad or something, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
play it.
Right.
But I always just drag and drop samples.
Yep. Me too. Me too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I just felt way more comfortable just building a drum set that way.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not the only one.
No, you're not the only one. I totally resonate with that.
Yeah.
Because like then it makes me think more about like grid and the elements of the grid rather than trying to like sometimes the drums are supposed to be the framework that you build other stuff on rather than like when I'm playing on a pad, I'm going for hooks. And then I feel like the drums like go to an area that's like very look at me. I'm the drums rather than being the quarterback or the like backbone of the whole thing when I drag and drop and place it in. I don't know.
Yeah, I think because I'm doing a lot of drag and drop samples and stuff like that, it's kind of the same thing. You know, I'm treating it like just another instrument instead of like trying to perform something.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm the same way. I think it's funny because a lot of people don't really understand what drum programming even is. Because there's like a misnomer that it's just loops or drum machines.
Right.
But most of the people that are drummers that I talk to are like, yeah, like sometimes we'll use loops, but it's mostly as like a labor of love. Like, no, I want that hi-hat here. Like, super specific.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And finding like sometimes, especially with things like hi-hat or snare drum, like ghost notes,
yes,
want them to be somewhere in between the actual grid.
Cool. Yes.
Using like the swing quotient in Logic or something like that.
Exactly. No, that's a great point. Ghost notes are the hardest thing to program, but the most rewarding thing to program.
Yeah.
When you nail that, it's different. It ends up kind of being otherworldly. Like, yeah, it's like okay, that's somewhere in between a real drummer and a digital drummer, and that's a pretty hip place to be.
Totally. Yeah. And when you start playing drums on top of like samples and stuff like that, even though you're physically playing it, it still sounds okay if you chop it up and line it up perfectly. It gives more of an acoustic feel.
That's a good point.
Because you're playing in a live room with the sounds bouncing off the walls into the mic. Love that.
In terms of like dynamics, programming with dynamics, do you like say you're doing an eighth note, a hi-hat or something? That could be eighth or 16th, depending on where you put the snare. But like doing that, like are you modulating up and down the volumes? Do you look for like different samples to create like different timbral effects, or do you kind of like stay more static, like traditional dance music where it's just kind of like the same sample across the whole grid?
Yeah, I think it's kind of all of those things. Like with hi-hat, sometimes I could take the same hi-hat sample.
Yes.
And you can take like the ones that are supposed to be quieter and maybe pitch it down a little bit.
Ooh, okay, yeah.
And also you can do the gain.
Cool.
Yeah, so gain it down, pitch, or even take like an EQ and cut off the tops.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that it's getting darker on those like non-dominant beats.
Yeah, you're kind of trying to recreate what it would be like if you're actually playing the hi-hat there.
I like it.
But it has a slightly different feel because it's all electronic.
Yes, and I think that's cool because I don't know, in the same way that I felt when I actually touched some analog gear, I understood my digital gear that much better. It's like, oh, I understand what that knob's supposed to do, and like now I know how to use that knob on the computer. I feel like a similar thing with like drums. Like even if you don't play drums, if you're programming drums, like get behind a kit, just put your ear next to some things and hit some stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, they'll both inform each other.
Yeah. It each grows the other.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about touring, and then after that, I want to get to your awesome mashup kind of like evolution of your remix career onto this like awesome digital medium. But first, let's talk some touring. What do people not know that are like thinking like, oh, I want to go on the road, like this is what I want my life to be? Like what do they not know about touring, the stuff that is not on the spotlight?
Okay, well, first of all, it's very little playing and a lot of loading and unloading.
Yes.
Bigger bands, but
Right.
there's very little playing. We like to joke that you're basically a professional truck driver.
That's a good point. You're a professional truck driver and like
That has a hobby of
play sometimes.
like, you know,
Exactly.
hour every day.
Exactly. Yeah. What about like you get into a new city? Do you go hotel restaurant and keep it chill, or do you try and like explore the city a little bit? What's your flow when you go into like a new place?
So it usually depends if you're. So I've done like some bus tours.
Yeah.
And with the bus, it's nice because you wake up in the city.
Yes, right.
So that allows you to have more free time in the city to explore. You can grab some food. A lot of the times when you're in like a van, which is normally how I tour, you're driving during the day.
Yes.
And then you get to the city and you get to the venue, you load in, sometimes it takes 2 hours.
Yeah.
And load in, sound check, and then you go eat. And
yeah.
And then when you're done eating, it's almost time to play, basically.
Yes.
So there isn't too much free time to explore if you're in a van. But the nice part is that you really get to see the country because you're driving and you get to see the landscape of the country more.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I don't know if people understand that the primary value of a tour bus is being able to have a professional driver that drives you at night.
Yeah.
That is awesome because then you wake up and you're in your place and you actually do stuff and go for a walk and
right. Yeah.
be a human being.
The tricky part is that it's very difficult to sleep. Well, for some people, it's difficult to sleep on the bus.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
For me, I was pretty good at sleeping on the bus until you get to the city, which is usually like 5, 6 in the morning. And
yeah.
start,
starting and stopping and turning. Yeah. Yeah.
Turns, and then it's like, you're up,
I agree. My first bus tour that I ever did, I went to lay down in my bunk and the sound guy stopped me because I was going to lay with my head facing the driver. And he was like, if we stop too hard, you're going to break your neck. And I was like, oh my God.
One thing to learn, yeah.
And don't poop on the bus.
On the bus, yeah, that's very important. And also, which I learned the hard way, is don't drink the water.
Ooh.
I ended up getting E. coli.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. It was bad.
Yeah, we just saved a bunch of people's lives right there. Don't drink the water and don't sleep with your head facing the driver.
Yeah. I had a water bottle that it had a filter on the top.
Yeah.
And they told me, don't drink the water, but I was like, oh well, I have a filter on my water bottle.
Yeah.
Clearly it does not take out the E. coli. So yeah.
All right, I want to talk about your mashups because we got another like 5 minutes or so here. Yeah. Let's talk these mashups. Do you feel like that was an evolution of your remix days? and talk about like I know that people are really responding well to them. I think they're super fun. Where did this start? What was the goal, and then like what has it turned into?
So it actually started as a fluke. I was just in the car with my fiance, and
Uh,
she said to me, I just heard at work the Fleetwood Foxes, like one of your favorite bands. And I was like, and I just started laughing. I was like, oh my God, I need to make a mashup of those two things.
yeah.
And so she is a comedy writer.
Oh,
So,
perfect.
yeah, so she helped me make that first video.
Cool.
And so it was, Fleet Foxes and Fleetwood Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, so we filmed it, and I really had no expectations and put it up, and then it just started blowing up, and then Robin Pecknold from Fleet Foxes reposted it.
No way.
It was just
Yeah.
it was crazy. So I was like, all right, I guess I should make more of these.
Yes. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, it just started blowing up from there. It was crazy.
Man, the power of just those little ideas and actually doing them, like that's the magic, is you actually followed through. I feel like a lot of people have like come up with like a funny pun combination, but then they just like, like, oh, that'd be fun to do someday.
For me, it's like, as soon as I get an idea, I need to do it right away.
Cool.
Or else if I wait too long, then I'm just like, I don't care. I'm not going to do that. So
That's great advice.
when I get an idea, like I probably got home and I was like, we have to do this now. We need to film this right now.
And look at what it does. Look at what it does by making that call. I love it.
Yeah. And then after that, so then I was like, all right, well, I posted this video where I was like, I reached out to, the people, the followers, and I was just like, you come up with ideas for mashups.
Mm-hmm.
And that way I can do, like, on Instagram, you could do like the quote video.
Yeah. Right.
So, and I feel like that really helps too, because it got a lot of people involved.
Cool.
With it also. So everybody's like trying to come up with their favorite mashups of two bands.
I love it.
Yeah.
You create that audience engagement, you create content, and you get to like play with something that people already love. I feel like that's special.
Yeah, it's been fun, and I see it. It's also like a puzzle.
Cool. It's another puzzle.
Very similar to mixing, because you have two bands.
Mm-hmm.
So you come up with the title basically.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay, which two songs work together? And it's you can't just use any song. It's
Mm-hmm.
it really needs to be songs that are either in the same key.
Okay.
Or you can pitch the keys, but it's
Yeah, then you lose it.
weird.
Right, that makes sense.
Or what
Mm-hmm.
I found the best is if the like the lyrics are in like the relative minor. So like if the track is in C major and then the vocals are in A minor, it gives the lyrics like a different feel.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like, I think that the Fleetwood Foxes one.
Uh-huh.
The I keep on going. Is in a major key.
Okay.
And the Fleetwood Mac song's in a minor key.
Mm-hmm.
It just gives the melody this whole dark flavor to it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a great point. And that's I mean, part of the value to like study music theory or whatever is to like understand just that it's a bag of tricks, and like that's pulling from one that I think some people with relative major and minor, it's like, oh, I don't want to touch that. It's like, no, look at like you're using it music theory in like a hilarious way that's leading towards really happy people on the other end. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and it's like with those mashups, it's basically I just use Melodyne and I use the Isotope RX.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows you to isolate the vocals. It's just like the craziest technology.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's called music rebalance.
Okay.
And basically you could just put whatever song you want into it, and then you can isolate the vocals, you can isolate the drums, you can isolate the bass. It's like, it's crazy. So just with those two tools, I could make most of the mashups.
I love that. I actually did something very similar for the artist that I work with called Rhye. They wanted me to do a remix, but they didn't send me anything. So just do a remix.
Yeah, exactly. For those remixes, you can take any song and just isolate the vocals.
Yep. And the drums, when you do that, sound wild. And so sometimes I'll use them. I'll rip out the drums and like
Try that.
It sounds crazy because it's got a bunch of artifacts in it. Because like we were saying, the drums are such a wide spectrum of frequencies. There's artifacts all over it. You take that and like throw into a stereo phaser or something like that, and it seriously feels like your head is like spinning. It's pretty sweet.
I'm gonna need to try that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Danny.
Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
Love it. And I'd like to recommend to all of the listeners or watchers to check out Danny's Instagram as well as Wolf and Love and all of the stuff that Danny's working on, cross music, video, the whole ecosystem of what we do.
Yeah, the Wolf and Love is Wolf and Love You, YOU.
Love it.
Check it out.
Check it out. We'll throw that in the bio too.
Cool.
So
thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Take it easy. And if you have any questions, reach out to us on Instagram or whatever. We'll be happy to answer them. Thanks a lot.
Cool. All right.
See ya.
Appreciation.